Right here, I'm in the studio with Hexxed. This is the Rock Run Amok show. Introduce yourselves here.
I'm Steve. I do a bit of backing vocals and second guitar.
I'm Niall. I play drums and also trigger samples and electronics.
I'm Owen. I play guitar and do a bit of vocal as well.
Right, you got a new recording out there, the Synapse Collision.
Yeah.
This is designed to, represent where you've been and where you're going now. And you're going to unleash it upon the Belfast audience at this decade of aggression. What do you think they should expect?
They should expect something a wee bit different to what previously went before. I guess we're a little more progressive these days. The material is much deeper, I would say. It's more complex. It's more multi-layered. There's a fair bit more going on. We've introduced new elements such as polyrhythms, improvisation, electronics, and clean vocals, things like that. Some elements that weren't present before. The Synapse Collision has been written as almost like a single track, taking a leaf out of bands like the more proggy bands from the 70s and trying for...
What, kind of like a concept album, man?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Concept album,
yeah. Sort of around the start of writing the Synapse, when it was basically Niall and myself. I remember quite clearly there was one moment Niall brought me in after practice. It was my first exposure to King Crimson, a song called Level 5. For me, that was a turning point. It really blew things open. It was a gateway to getting away from traditional metal and really pushing towards new things. And ever since then, for me personally anyway, it's been a real discovery into great bands like King Crimson, Van der Graaf Generator, Diagonal, Astra.
Even bands like Tool and stuff are quite clearly influenced by all these kind of bands, you know. And although I wouldn't really compare ourselves to Tool, like we do something a bit different, I would say that we've probably come along the same kind of thought patterns in a way, you know.
Well, the prog thing has had quite a lengthy revival in the last 4 or 5 years, with bands like Opeth and what the guy, the producer, Porcupine Tree and all that there, like.
It's just been a very logical progression for us, a very natural thing, and after a while the album started to write itself, you know, and just because of what we were listening to and because of what we were doing, you know, and kind of expanding our influences and stuff.
I think the nature of polyrhythms too, if once they start to get going, you need a length of time for them to actually click in as well.
Sure, yeah.
The tracks expanded from, my views, expanded themselves.
That's a good point. Actually, yeah, a lot of the time we would have been doing quite intricate, short little bursts of things, and that was just our writing style, and we do still keep bits of that, you know. But I think we kind of made a conscious effort to try and expand the length of things out to let them evolve more naturally, and there's certainly large sections of this album that do that, you know.
What do you think people are going to say, like, because you've had such a dramatic change, do you think people are going to think, why didn't they just form another band, or would you say that there's still that old element, the Hexxed behind it all?
Well, I think the thing people need to remember is their expectations aren't ours. We have heard reactions to the new material, which basically goes along the lines of, this is not what I expected. Well, for us to try and write music based on other people's expectations would be ridiculous. So we basically hibernated and went away and wrote our own material and took no notice of what was happening out there. There are two things that run through the band. The thing that has always been there, and the reason people shouldn't be surprised, is that progression has always been, I use that word progression not in a sense of prog rock or anything like that, but progression as in each of the band members needs to feel that they're progressing on their individual instruments, and the band as an entity in and of itself needs to progress. Things that stay the same die out. So for us to get excited and to write meaningful music, we need to be progressing, and that is always going to be the case. So although this new release, the way I kind of think about it is the ideals are very progressive, but we're still using a lot of the tools that we had spent 14 years developing and honing. Mm-hmm. But if people think that this is a massive shift, they should hear the stuff that we're proposing doing in the meantime. It's going to end up like, I don't know, jazz fusion or electronica or something completely different. We have no ambition at all to try and satisfy any audience. It's completely selfish. We'll satisfy ourselves, and people who like it, well and good. Those who don't, tough.
So you're saying you've already the fire's lit for new excursions into musical stratosphere? Like?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is necessarily the intention to go and like say write a fusion album or something. But I think that the fact that we're prepared to say that might happen, is definitely a good thing, and it definitely marks the kind of progression that Owen's talking about. I mean, I don't think that you'll ever get away from some of the kind of tools and styles that we use, and you'll, even though like this is quite a marked difference to what we did before, there are certainly elements of it that people would recognize as being ourselves, things that we naturally do, and like I for one think that that's quite important, to push yourself, but at the same time always use those tools that work and that feel right within the music.
Uh-huh.
With the eyes of this world, so we focus on resolve. I choose to be connected. Feel, breathe. The synchronistic heartbeat, the tidal shift that ebb and flow. See how the life is, does it inspire? Grounded, but with minds in flight, you crucify the ego, the rusted chains of fear give way. The old last fears of splendor. It whispers out the shallow bed, pretend to feast on words they read. But with senses split wide open, I catch a glimpse and reach out to engage the flow.
A lot of this music draws reference to science and the occult, and the way I kind of like to think about the music here is that a lot of quantum mechanics, a lot of the new science that's coming about, would only have got there to that position based on Newtonian science that came beforehand. And it's the same with the music. The synapse wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the music that went beforehand. But to regurgitate and to reiterate the same music over and over again would just, for me anyway, would be boring and stale. So yes, it's now what it is because of what's went before, but it can never always just be repeating the same thing. We need to progress, and that's always going to be a core concept behind the band. It always has been. As soon as we start repeating ourselves, I fear that Niall's going to run away because he can't handle anything sort of repetitive, or and he spurs me on, and vice versa. And the new guys that we have in the band, especially, they're not necessarily from a death metal background. I think death metal is an awesome place to come from, and I still love death metal. Listen to a lot of it still. I think it's a really, really good place to cut your teeth, good place to learn your skills. It really encourages you to be tight, to really master the instrument. So it's not like we're turning our backs and saying death metal is rubbish. And this ultimately, like if you listen to it, it still sounds like death metal, but it's a definite progression. Yeah, so what went before was important, but what's coming up in the future is even more important.
Would you say the ease with the control bands individually, like say with a DIY ethic, can produce their albums themselves and stuff, helps with new directions. Were you involved in the production yourselves?
It was entirely recorded and produced by ourselves and people, close to us. Like, there was no big studios. The drums were recorded in my garage, like under controlled conditions and so on. Like, I mean, it wasn't just winged together. We sat down and thought about it, but it was, as you say, a kind of DIY effort. Like,
it allowed you guys to expand upon ideas. They weren't working to any sort of time factor or anything.
Yeah.
When it was right.
We weren't sitting there watching the clock. Some of the recording, I mean, for example, my guitars must have taken the guts off a year to record. What I wanted to do was get out of my mind and just sort of sit in my own room and really work on the articulation of certain notes and really push on that. And I personally don't feel like I could have achieved that with some guys sitting over me at £40 an hour. And we got to the point, I feel, where we knew ourselves better than anyone else could. And also, we know people who can help. And certainly Niall was doing a degree in music technology, and we thought, the hell with it, we know ourselves what we want to sound like. So we've ended up with a production that isn't polished, but then again, we're not a polished band. And I think a lot of up and coming bands listen to some digital death metal recording, or doesn't even need to be death metal, and hear that and aspire to be that. But I've always been struck by the sense of, why do that? At the end of the day, you are a local band. Why not embrace that? Good music's good music. The Beatles were writing great tunes on a 4-track recorder with much less technology than you can scrape together now for £300. So why the hell, if the music's good, that'll carry through,
At the same time, where you're going to have, like you're saying, you're a local band, and a lot of people are going to have to think about, like, the direction you're taking or whatever. And all, like, but you're also going to find, once, say, your stuff gets across the sea or whatever, over to Europe and all, like, some people are going to be hearing you for the first time, and this is going to be you. So you're going to have that advantage. Like, is that something you look forward to, getting over the water anyway, and not just being a local band?
Yep.
Yeah, of course. It's a good point. Perhaps one hadn't really thought of. That people be hearing us for the first time, as we are now. Yeah.
I mean, well, you've also got, like, kids seem to be getting smarter with the kind of music they're getting into now, what with the internet and the ease of the access of it and all. There's going to be a generation coming up that never heard, like, say, the old hacks even from here, and they're going to hear you for the first time, maybe even down at this decade of aggression thing. Like, do you think it'll take as long for your next recording?
No, I think the plan is we're going to play a select few gigs here, and we want to get back in and writing. For me personally, it's all about creating new things, and whilst I do enjoy playing gigs, the big enjoyment for me is coming up with that new riff. Just whenever you write a riff or a piece of music and suddenly you've got the rest of the guys really focused in on it, that's the magic for me, and that's what I'm always striving to come back to, that level of creativity. It's all about creation, coming up with new things that surprise yourself, things that push you outside your own comfort zone. So whilst we're going to really enjoy ourselves playing a handful of gigs here, I'm already thinking, and even finishing the writing to this stuff, the Synapse, I'm already thinking of the new stuff, especially now that we've got basically 3 new guys in, with loads of ideas from different backgrounds, bringing new skills into the band.
Yeah, do you want to give the guys a shout?
Yeah, okay, so the 3 of us here...
we also have Ryan Gorman playing bass.
You've an our singer.
Yep, we got Marty Byrne. People might know him as Dr.
Was he in
Lilt.
Fragile Human Organs?
He is actually currently playing with Fragile Human Organs, that's right, yeah. He also used to be in Lotion, lead singer for Lotion. People know him as a bit of a mad guy, like, but I mean, he's definitely going to lend a certain element of that, and he really is an awesome vocalist, like, with some really great ideas, not just about singing, but about technology and using technology in different ways, like, and he definitely adds a very different aspect, to the whole band, like,
and he's a permanent member of the band now.
Yep.
Yeah, we initially got him in just to do guest vocals on the recording. Just after that point, we just sort of propositioned him about coming into the band. He was more than happy to join, which, brilliant.
He's got a fantastic beard as well, which I think drew me to him.
His beard is beautiful.
I could never really hope to achieve that level of coverage, you know.
When he closes his mouth, it looks like the whole lower half of his face is just beard.
That's probably more
Seamless.
important than any vocal abilities or anything.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Well, where did you poach Ryan from then?
Ryan, I don't know. We came to practice and then Ryan was there. He just sort of came along one day. I think he had lots of good gear.
Yeah.
No,
Gear as in like technological gear, not as in.
Yeah.
Of course.
He came in with a nice bass and offered to buy us. He was working in a game shop and he offered us lots of discounts and things like that.
I met Ryan and sort of brought him along. I was doing a GCSE in music at the time, and he's the younger brother of a guy I went to school with, and I knew he played guitar, and I asked him would he help me out because nobody else could help me out playing this wee piece for this GCSE music thing that I was doing just a couple of years ago. And he came along and played, and then I just sort of said to him, about maybe coming down and playing bass, and that's it. Like, yeah.
Ryan came in first. Ryan came in and joined Niall and I. Niall and I have been playing probably for about a year and a half, just really working on polyrhythms, and that was kind of the basis of the Synapse. We sort of had this kind of telepathy going on there after Kieran Tracy and Jared Ritchie left the band. Niall and I just hunkered in. We had a long winter of really learning to play together. We started to introduce polyrhythms, which we kind of were pushing away from being tight in the traditional sense. We're really trying to throw our normal sense of rhythm out the window. Then Ryan came in, and then quite a bit later, after we had recorded the bones of the Synapse Collision, we got Steve in. I was starting to write lyrics, and I knew Steve from sort of occult circles, shall we say, and knew that his philosophy in life would really gel well with the sort of lyrical aspect of what we were trying to do. And he's a good sounding board, and apart from that, he's a fantastic guitarist and singer.
It's probably a good point actually to say that the last song on the album, Trislopics, the bare bones of that was a song that we played at the last gig that we played in the Empire in May 4 years ago.
The stand-up guy and all that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's right. So it was like one of our last tracks on that gig, and I think that was kind of like the basis that me and Owen used to write some of this stuff, But as Owen says, then we actually went even further into that kind of realm of things, and I think whenever people have been commenting on the album, they say that like that track is probably like more like what they expect from us. It might be because that's the last track is actually a little bit older, maybe than some of the rest of it. But it was definitely like a stepping stone for us into the rest of the stuff. Like I think
Certainly, yeah.
fruit in inexplicable thoughts. Unlike the words that fail to open minds, the need to quantify denies the moment present. The moment passing, the moment past. But in the mind's eye, we are redefined.
hasn't done us any harm, you know, not playing for quite a while. We've been very fortunate. We're working with a lot of very good people and people who have faith in us. People like James from the Distortion Project, who has gone out on a limb, not even hearing the music, God help him.
Yeah,
he's put us up, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Ian from Underground Movement down in Dublin, hadn't even heard anything, and basically give us distribution after not hearing anything for 4 years. I mean, we could have came out with that electronic trip-hop jazz album, you know.
Well, you have built up sort of like a name just for your name. You know, like because of the mysticism about what you've been doing for the last few years and what have you.
Exactly.
And in a sense, that's paid off. Not that you calculated that or designed that or anything. Like, but it seems to work in your favour that you've built up this year, and this is the release at the end of it, like the Synapse Collision. I also wanted to talk about the artwork. I was reading a wee bit on what Glenn was inspired by and all to try and think. Obviously, this is how you approached him and then he went, right, what do they want? Like,
Mhm.
you know, he talked to you about it and all, I'm sure, before he actually come up with the final idea.
Glenn is another guy like James and Ian, you know, who really sort of, well, we carefully selected Glenn. Well, his artwork stands head and shoulders above an awful lot of other things that are out there. We just had an intuition that he would really be able to present what we want to do. And he has, I've always viewed Glenn as having that kind of DIY aesthetic, which pretty much sits to what we were doing musically. So obviously...
He did do the Where Gods Look Away.
That's right.
And it's like,
He did.
Yeah, he
We've
did.
worked with him
that's
before, yeah.
different artwork again, like, you know?
It is, yeah.
It
It's
is.
like
The same
different,
guy.
different brief even almost as well, you know. And I think it does say a lot about the fact that, you know, we are approaching things ourselves a little differently, you know, that we came to him with a slightly different attitude and he produced, you know, different sort of artwork, like, you know.
We fed Glenn a few ideas about where the lyrics were coming from and the sort of musical concept. Yeah, he basically did a shitload of research and outdid himself, I feel, you know. The artwork is littered with symbology, and if you really take the time to look at it, and if you're a tall read and such things, you'll start to see little things. And I think that's an analogy for the music and the whole package itself. I mean, what we've tried to do is create music and artwork and aesthetic that doesn't just present itself on listen one, that you have to dig a wee bit deeper to really to get everything out of. But that's what I've always admired in other bands, with Sugar and that. Robert Fripp sort of saying that whenever he was writing stuff for King Crimson, that he wanted it to have an impact on the first listen, an impact after 30 listens, and an impact after 50 listens. So there was always something there to draw the ear to. Whereas there's a lot of great music out there, like you listen to it and it's great for a week, and then afterwards it's shelved. A lot of the bands that I've got into, I actually hated on first listening, be that heavy bands like Morbid Angel and Meshuggah, or be that sort of stuff like maybe Van der Graaf, or even, I just couldn't digest Tool when I first heard it, or the Mars Volta, or any of these bands sounded rubbish to my ears. But the reason I love those bands so much is because they changed something in me. They changed my opinion.
Made you work.
They made me work.
You
So
put
I
the work
went
in to
from
listen to the album.
Well, it does seem like people are having to work listening to your stuff, because I mean, the fact that they're prepared to work for it is pretty cool, like, you know, because they
Tom,
probably wouldn't do that for a lot of other bands.
If you think about it, like music these days is so disposable. You know, you download a track on iPod, or you know, on iTunes on your iPod. You listen to it, you throw it away. You don't even listen to the whole album these days. This you're gonna have to. You have to put the
Would
work
you
in.
say that's one of the reasons why you want to make somebody listen to the whole album, because it's all the one piece, nearly?
Yes, it is. yeah.
Even sitting trying to think about where exactly some track markers might go, you know, cause
You're not putting that on shuffle, like.
no,
No,
you're not.
no.
No, it's
Definitely
not
not.
one for shuffle. No.
But you know, music should be like that, even live. And again, to sort of come back to Robert Fripp, you know, he expects the audience at a gig to invest time. If the artist is the only person given, then it's not really an interactive experience. And whenever our music, I'd like to think, is sort of aimed at people who do think about things a little bit more. And those people who are prepared to invest time and effort will be rewarded. And those who are after their cheap hit, you know, I mean, to me that equates to pop music, you know. So this is the antithesis of pop music. It's a hard listen, it's difficult to penetrate, but once you do, whenever you really take the time to invest in it, I think there's great substance there, more substance than there's been on any other Hexxed release.
Decade of Aggression. Will you get to play it all?
We're not going to play it all at this gig.
You
We-
plans to do that though?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, certainly in the future, and you know, make it, you know, more like a, I don't know, Odyssey sort of. You know, I think we were talking to James. He sort of compared it to Pink Floyd, almost like, you know. I mean, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but I think that is definitely the vibe. But you know, don't really want to give too much away about, you know, the Decade of Aggression gig. We don't think that, you know, playing the whole thing from start to finish would really be appropriate for that gig, and you know, we need to have a sense of appropriateness, you know, at times as well, you know.
Well, whenever we decide to play select gigs, part of the reason for that is to try and put on more than just an average gig. The material that we have requires something a wee bit different.
I think that a lot of what went into making this album actually is like chance happenings and chance discoveries and stuff like that. So, you know, we're constantly on the lookout for coincidences, almost, like, you know, and if that kind of thing were to crop up, you know, basically we wouldn't rule anything out, like, you know, and if it comes along and it seems right at the time, then, you know, maybe we'll go along with it.
Well, before I have a Synapse Collision, that was right. Hexxed, it was great to have you in here. If you just want to tell us a wee bit about who printed it up and what have you, and where we can get it, most importantly.
Yeah, well, through Glyn, we actually sourced a printer in the US called Stumptown, who print sort of using old sort of technology, and they print, you know, using sort of recycled materials and very sort of green aspects to their work entirely, you know. In fact, you know, it comes in a cellophane wrapper, and we were debating, you know, whether that was really, you know, in keeping with the whole thing, but it was a requirement to have it with distribution networks and so on. So I mean, you know, really great guys, Stumptown, you know, did a really great job on printing this and making it, just, you know, it's just a beautiful thing to have in your hand, you know, as a result of Glyn's artwork and you know, and their printing and their materials and so on. So you know, that's
Great colours on it too. Like
it's incredible. It really is incredible. Like you know,
It's created using old mechanical presses, and the guys set it up, and they actually go through each copy, God help them, and check each one. There's slight imperfections, so no two are the same.
So every CD is
It's got slightly different. So and they're completely clued in. They totally understand the DIY ethic.
Yeah.
So really nice guys. And whenever they have these mechanical presses running, they just listen to it rather than sitting at a freaking computer. They just listen to it, and if they hear something that sounds amiss, then they go and they check it out. But yeah, you should check out their website, because the stuff they're doing is pretty awesome, I think.
it really is awesome, and very personable people. Like, you know, it's not just some guy on the end of the line. It's you're talking to the people who are
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
What's the
definitely.
website there?
Well, yeah, we currently have a temporary sort of holding site up on hexxed.co.uk.
Right.
That will actually be the address of our site that's just getting built at the moment. We're going to have a lovely site, but you can buy the album on there at the moment anyway. We have a shop on there.
And the Underground Movement.
Underground
Website
Movement,
as
you can
well.
get it. You can get it through Underground Movement. You can get it from Sentinel in Dublin as well.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, you can get it from ourselves at gigs.
I have stalls at it as well.
Yep. Well, we'll be selling our own, you know, from ourselves as well.
In fact, you
there
can
as
get
well.
it at any record shop in the UK and Ireland.
You would have to order
You
it.
have to order it.
Yep.
You can
But
get it.
you-
Alright, great.
In theory, you can walk into HMV if you're brave and get it from there. But
Order it from our website.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Give us the money.
yeah. You're
Alright,
going to
well-
get cheaper. Yeah.
Once again, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers,
It's a
Tom.
real pleasure to have you here on the Rock Run Amok,
Yeah,
and
cheers, Tom.
looking forward to the Decade of Aggression. And I encourage all listeners to get down and hear it, because it's been how long now?
Almost
4 years since we
almost
played
4
live.
years since our last gig, but you know, come down and expect, you know, something very different, but it's definitely a direction that I think everybody will like.
Thanks once again, Les.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers, Tom.
Thanks.
Tuned into the community. This is Phil FM 103.2.